The wait is finally over. Hardy's hyper-anticipated sophomore solo album, The Mockingbird and the Crow, is out, and it is time to talk about it. It has truly been a wild ride for the highly decorated Mississippi native Hardy, from his days as a songwriter crafting songs for artists like Florida Georgia Line, Morgan Wallen, and Blake Shelton, to the present day where Hardy stands as one of the most fascinating figures this era of mainstream country music has had to offer. Overall, his career has been a very steady progression, with each chapter in his career pushing his limits a little further, diving a little deeper into a variety of experimentation, and this new album is no exception. If anything, The Mockingbird and the Crow is a drastic leap even by Hardy's standards. It is by far his most outlandish project, musically crossing into numerous genres, conceptually being his most conscious and plotted album, and lyrically his most outspoken. Which can be a bit of a double-edged sword, but I'll get to that later. First off, just so we're all on the same page, I'm going to give a brief explanation of how the album is structured, because if you don't understand the motives behind the decisions, they won't make any sense. So the album is 17 tracks running just over an hour long, but the track list is divided evenly in two, with the middle song and title track acting as somewhat of a bridge from the first half to the second. The first half of the album, all in lowercase font, is the Mockingbird side of the record, which represents the country side of Hardy. At times it is safer lyrically, in general just much more familiar territory, not only for Hardy but his fan base, and on a broader scale the country music audience as a whole. Then at the midpoint of the project, we hit the title track, The Mockingbird and the Crow, which is sort of this self-declaratory moment where Hardy proudly admits he is a mockingbird. He's proud of where he's from and isn't ashamed to write songs that sound like other songs you've heard. It's just his nature, it's what he knows and what he does. But then at the halfway point, the song shifts dark and cynical, and the mood completely shifts as Hardy reintroduces himself as the Crow. The Crow represents Hardy's rebellious side, the part of him that refuses to be confined to any label or box anyone tries to put on him. This side is bold and reckless, with Hardy declaring that he will fly the line he chooses, which is a reference to the saying, going as the crow flies, and as a result, the back half of this album is not country whatsoever, and is not trying to be. The backstretch of this album is blunt, heavy, straightforward metal rock songs with some trap and electronic elements thrown into the mix. So now that we're all on the same page, it is time to break down each side of the album and see how this concept panned out musically. I'm a mockingbird. True to the Mockingbird title, the first half of this album, for the most part, is rather familiar territory. But despite living up to what is maybe an inherently negative trait, I think the Mockingbird side of the album is fantastic. It offers up every side of Hardy we've come to know and love, but also arguably the best version of each side. From rowdy, youthful sing-alongs like Beer and Red and Drink One For Me, to more thoughtful tracks and ballads like Screen and Eyeing Country, as well as a healthy dose of unique, peculiar ideas only Hardy could muster up, like Happy and Wait in the Truck. And because it's Hardy, you can be sure each song is packed with loads of clever double entendres and plays on words, and every other lyrical twist Hardy likes to spin into his music. As far as southern bangers go, even though they're never really reinventing the wheel, I was ready and excited for another dose of solid, Hardy party songs, and he absolutely delivered on that front. Specifically, Red with Morgan Wallen is the most straightforward Southern pride anthem being offered here, but as you'd expect from a collab with Morgan and Hardy, the chemistry is through the roof and the energy is spot on. I ain't talking politics, I'm talking small town. I love how they opted to butt into each other's lines rather than each of them just taking a verse for their own. The whole song just feels like a fresh approach to a collaboration. I love the guitar fills and the transitions. Overall, just a very well-built, well-structured track. However, I do have one minor complaint with the song. I am not a fan of how they chose to process Morgan's vocals. They just have this subtle chorus effect as well as a slapback in the chorus of the song, which... It's the same thing they did with his vocals on his new song One Thing at a Time, but I think it works on that track because naturally that song is quicker, slightly poppier, whereas Red is such a gritty, blue-collar fun song. I don't know why they chose to sand off the edges of his voice, making them so buttery smooth, especially when he's beside Hardy, who has a very raw delivery on this track. It just stands out as an odd choice, but far from the point of hindering the feel of the song. It's just a minor thing I had to mention while I was on the topic. Eyeing Country may have the catchiest hook on the entire album. Lyrically, it's a cute love song, with the catch being the fact that there's no I in country, but there's a Y-O-U. But it's the chorus of the song that keeps me coming back so often. That opening melody has been stuck in my head from the moment I heard it. I know how to build a house on a hill. Screen seems to be the one capturing most people's hearts, and for good reason. I absolutely love the sentiment being pushed to just log off every now and then, disconnect for a little bit, just shut off your screen every now and then. The whole concept of a dopamine detox is something I've wanted to delve into in the new year. It's just something you don't hear about very much, especially in the form of music. So I love that Hardy chose to use his music, his art, to kind of push this idea. It makes the song really easy to root for, even if I think some of the lines can be a little bit tongue-in-cheek, bordering on corny, like every battery does, but your memory will never die. I'm not sure about that one. But again, it gets the pass because I support the idea he's trying to push.
Screen. Someone somewhere bought a brand new ride.
However, in my opinion, the opus of this album has got to be the 7th song, Happy.
Happy lives all around the world.
Which plays into a little running subplot across the album, with these songs personifying emotions and objects, as we see on Beer and Jack, which are also like two sides of the same coin, which I really like. Meanwhile, Happy is a song where Hardy is telling you, the listener, about the emotion of happiness as if happiness is a character. He explains how happy is everywhere and he wants to be a part of everyone's lives, but we often push him away. And we get to know Happy. I like that Happy actually gets character traits. He doesn't like alcohol or bitterness. He's a very selfless person. He doesn't want anything in exchange. He just wants to make people's lives better, yet we actively seem to ignore him. And the catch of the song is Hardy wondering why everyone can't try a little harder to be just like Happy. And as I mentioned, with the lyrics referencing alcohol and the phrase thick as thieves, which can also be found in the song Beer, it draws a pretty obvious connection between those songs, which begin forming almost like a little triangle under this album. Across the entire board, I think that's something this album does very well, the sequencing. Pulling everything together, making sure this wildly ambitious project remains cohesive. It's little decisions that make this album flow so much smoother. For example, Wait in the Truck ends with Hardy accepting that he will be in jail for the rest of his life, and then the next song, Drink One For Me, Hardy is in heaven looking down on his friends, asking them to drink one for him. Even the whole transition from the Mockingbird to the Crow album, from country to rock, is more gradual than just the title track. Here Lies Country Music is a nightmare Hardy has where country music dies, but it's also the final country song on the album before the rock starts flowing in, so it just makes a lot of sense. It's like the death of country music, even if it's hypothetical, and then we get into the rock stuff. The 12th song, Truck Bed, begins with Hardy pointing out the bone-dry bottle of Jack he finished off the night before, which is fitting seeing as the song before Truck Bed is Jack. And while I'm on it, I just want to reiterate my love for that song Jack and Beer. What I was mentioning earlier when I said they're two sides of the same coin, Jack is this really interesting one where it's being sung from the perspective of Jack Daniels. And he's trying to manipulate Hardy, saying, hey, I only made you happy, so even though your friends say you should give me up, like, come on. It's dark, it's manipulative, it's fascinating, but then the opener of the whole album, Beer, is the other side of that. It's being sung from the perspective of Beer, and Beer is calling back to all the good memories Hardy made with alcohol involved, whereas Jack is trying to justify the mess he has created. And it's songs and ideas and connections and triangles like that that make Hardy so fascinating. Getting back on the track list though, Truck Bed is one I've warmed up to substantially since its release. Initially, I just was not a big fan of it, but not only has it grown on me individually, but especially within the context of the album, the more electronic trap elements begin making more sense, and I've grown to quite enjoy the whole woozy, hungover feeling of the mellow guitar chords. The only aspect of that song I haven't warmed up to is the same issue that plagues the majority of the rock album for me personally, and if you've been around the channel for a while, if you've seen my other videos on Hardy, you know what this is. It's the screaming vocals. I just can't deal with the screaming vocals. It has never been my thing, it still is not my thing, and it probably never will be my thing. If anything, I'm just gonna side with my boy that I found a few months ago.
We are done with the scream rock on the job site. And also this type of stuff that what are we doing with the roar, dude?
However, I should preface before I get into my problems with some of the rock songs that it is sheerly personal taste. I polled you guys on my Instagram, and the vast majority of you guys are really rocking along to this, which, you know, good for you guys. I'm not going to say you can't, but just me personally, I can't stand it. So you can see how that would really impede on my enjoyment of the back half of the record. I'm not trying to sound like some cranky old grandma, but I just fail to get any enjoyment or musical value out of the screaming. To me, it's just so flat. There's never any melody involved. It's just the same growly, ominous tone that doesn't even sound like a musical note. To me, it's just unengaging and obnoxious to the point that I actively want to switch the song. So I should clarify, when I mean screaming vocal, I don't mean like hate your hometown loud belting. I just mean when Hardy does the like, oh. However, this only becomes a serious problem for me the deeper I get into the album. I'm actually quite fond of the first few rock songs, Sold Out, Jack, Truckbed, and 3006, which 3006 is one of my favorites on this entire project. I love the melody, I love the crunchy guitar tones, I love the bitterness. It's very tight, just over 2 minutes, but it packs the punch in that time frame. One of the best songs on this album. Even the first half of I Ain't in the Country No More, I still am enjoying that to an extent. It's just, as soon as we hit that growling scream, I am just completely turned off. Even if I like what's going on instrumentally, I cannot see past the screaming. I sound like a broken record, but even beyond the screaming, I feel like the general songwriting standard declines as the album wears on. Up until 3006, I absolutely love almost everything being offered here, but then the wheels seem to like completely fall off at the end. With I Ain't in the Country No More, Radio Song, Kill Shit Till I Die, and the Redneck Song. Not only do these songs feature by far the most screaming, but they also offer up the least lyrically in my opinion. Even though I understand the sentiments and attitudes of a song like Radio Song, I just don't think it's executed that well. I Ain't in the Country No More, like I said, I enjoy the first half, I enjoy the chorus, I enjoy the melody we get, but the last 2 minutes of just blaring chords with Hardy screaming go is just a big pile of nothing to me. While I'm listening, all I can see is like those crowds of like super weird metalheads doing their like kung fu stuff in a mosh pit. Like, I know this isn't Hardy's fan base, but this is all I can see when I'm listening to this. It's like the demonic Playboy Cardi of country music. And similarly, as I said, I understand the point Hardy is trying to make on Radio Song, but execution-wise, it just doesn't result in an enjoyable song. It starts off as an inoffensive, intentionally basic bro country song ripping off This Is How We Roll, but then it switches dark as Hardy screams, "This ain't no radio song," and it just becomes a full metal jam session with Hardy just repeatedly screaming the F word. But rather than staying there, the rest of the song, we just bounce back and forth between country, metal, country, metal. But neither the country or the metal are that interesting to me. Mostly because I don't think anything's being said here. The whole idea of the country verses and chorus is that this is bland, this is nothing. But then the metal comes along, and it's less than nothing. It's just Hardy doing his little, oh, but a swear. It's just like, it's just so aimless, and I don't get it. It's like Hardy's trying to appear rebellious or savage when really it all kind of just feels like shallow and corny. It feels like some pastor's kid rebelling. So he's like, I'm just gonna say the F word now, even though it makes no sense for any part of the song, but I think it's rebellious, so I'm gonna do it. I don't know, it's just, it's hard to take seriously. Which is also very much how I feel about the second to last track, Kill Shit Till I Die, which sounds like a kid throwing a temper tantrum. But again though, if you like this heavy metal stuff, I'm sure you're absolutely rocking out to Kill Shit Till I Die. Die! Die! Kill shit till I die! And like, that's cool, but it's not me. It's not my personal preference. And then the album closes off with the Redneck Song, which in my opinion is just a lesser version of Unapologetically Country as Hell. Yeah, the album really has a drastic fall from grace towards the end, but it does not discredit just how phenomenal I think the first 13 songs here are. For me, if you cut off those last 4 songs, you are looking at an early album of the year contender. And hey, like I said, if that savage screamo rock is your thing, I'm sure you're gonna love this album, but unfortunately, it's just not my forte, and so as a result, that closing run sort of stains what is otherwise an incredible project. So overall, The Mockingbird and the Crow is an adventure. Despite my distaste for some of what Hardy tried, I admire the extent to which he just went for it. He did not play anything safe on this album, and that brought a lot of fantastic moments, like the entire first half of the album. And even if I dislike some of the heavy metal cuts toward the end, I actually love what they represent. This willingness to just swing for the fences. The willingness to try something absurd, not worried about how it's going to be received. It's an attitude I hope more artists adopt moving forward. Hardy has always been a pioneer during each phase of his career, and this current one is no exception. Overall, the pros of this album far outweigh the cons. Despite those last few songs, I still look at this project in a very positive light, and would strongly recommend it to anyone who has not yet tried it out. Rating wise, I'm going to give this album a 7 on the dot. It's always interesting hearing the first major release of each year, and in 2023, Hardy really got the ball rolling, setting the bar at a pretty good height for all who are about to follow. I cannot wait to hear all all the other music coming out in the first half of 2023. It is a stacked spring, let me tell you. Can't wait to hear all that and cannot wait to see what Hardy chooses to do next. For now, I will enjoy this album. Anyways, that's all I've got for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, a like really does help me out. And if you're new, maybe consider subscribing for some more country music content. Got lots of stuff coming down the barrel. I know it's been a while since my last video. I was on vacation. I couldn't get a video out before, but here we are. We're back with a vengeance. In the description below, you can find links to my Instagram, Discord, podcast, and Patreon. If you want to check me out or support me on any of those, it'd be greatly appreciated. Comment what you thought of this album. I'd love to get some conversation going on down there. And other than that, I will see you guys in a bit.